You're seeing what's on my laptop. Oh, I bet you
I
do
don't
this
mind
one.
it. That's fine.
Can
Yeah,
you,
there
how
we
about
go.
this one?
Yeah, so that way it's just the main page, let us see it now.
Okay, that's all you said. I just picked the wrong one, that's all.
Yeah.
And I got trained on the owl today, so if we lose audio, Welcome everyone to the school board office. Tonight we're presenting our 2023-2024 budget for the public, our presentation. My name is Kelly Knott, the Secretary Treasurer, Head of Finances here at the school board office. This evening we have regrets from Trustee Tomaszewski and Superintendent Bartlett. And we have attending online via Zoom Trustee Sharker and Trustee Lawson. With us as well around the table, Trustee Young, Superintendent Henderson, Trustee Warner-Brown, Chairperson Anderson, and Trustee Humby. Let's get started. So I'd like to begin this evening with our Treaty 5 acknowledgement. We begin by acknowledging that we are signatories of Treaty 5 and that we reside in the traditional territory of the Nisiswayasik Cree Nation. We're all treaty people. So tonight, I do invite questions as we move through the presentation. It's a lot more relevant, I find, to have the conversation while we're looking at the information. But as well, there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the slideshow as well. We have Paul from Shaw broadcasting us graciously through Facebook Live once again. Those viewers may email questions to sdml@mysterynet.mb.ca. And the presentation that you're seeing this evening is also available on our website at the address mysterynet.mb.ca. And the link is through the Documents Finance section. So tonight's plan is we will look at our budget highlights and challenges, the district enrollments, our zero tax effects on the community, and the planned expenditures and surplus for the coming year. The guiding principles as we built our plan is our vision, which is success for all, core ethical values including respect, integrity, empathy, responsibility, and humility, ensuring safe learning environments in schools, providing educational services and programming, as well as managing public funds responsibly. Many factors have affected our budget as we're putting it together. Some of the most significant include post-pandemic and the mental health and academics and the fine balancing act that we're trying to see at the front lines. We've increased demands for student supports, and recovery learning is taking up tremendous amounts of effort and time. There's always resource shortfalls related to special needs. We have received $1.97 million of direct support for special needs, which has been unchanged since 2014. The province has announced additional funds for special needs, and that for Mystery Lake Division is $292,000. This $2.1 million of funding is great for us, but our student support services expenditures total $9.3 million, so there is a great disparity still that we put additional resources into our student support services. We also have student population imbalances. Thompson is a small community, but within each of our school locations, there's very unique situations with those student numbers throughout. We may see a decline of enrollment, perhaps of a couple hundred students, but if we only see 2 students here or 5 students there, it's not large enough to impact any type of staffing, so we still need to maintain staffing levels despite having declining enrollment. Inflation is no stranger to anyone's pocketbook these days, and we are managing our budget with an operating increase of 2.63%. I think we should be pretty proud of this, considering that Manitoba's inflation for last year was 7.8%. So I believe it's extremely reasonable. And we are again looking at a zero tax increase to city taxpayers. The province has provided what they refer to as a property tax offset grant. So in exchange for a zero tax increase, we have received $236,000 of additional funding from the province. Generally, enrollment, our September 30th student counts, is what generates our funding. What we have seen coming out of the pandemic is the province has based our funding for the last few years on an adjusted enrollment. So we have been funded on an adjusted enrollment from the 21-22 school year. This was 2,950 students that we are receiving funding for. Our actual enrollment of full-time equivalent students, FTE, for September 30th was 2,730. So that's roughly a difference of $2 million in funding. If they were truly funding on enrollments, we would have been down an additional $2 million. So the funding of school enrollment adjustments helps us to mitigate the effects of declining student population. The declining population is offset by the students that we are seeing with higher needs coming in, as well as trying to balance our inflation. The enrollment funding adjustment that we have received equates to $2,467,000, so it is quite significant. We have seen students leave the community at the start of the pandemic, and we're not seeing those back in place yet. Included for your information is some of the enrollments by school, so you can see where we are declining from 3,168 students in September 2019 to current 2,963. Our enrollment has remained consistent this year versus last year, with a change of 3 students overall. Some of the additional funding highlights that Mystery Lake received is additional funds for inflationary pressures that the province announced in the amount of $1.58 million. We are also receiving funds that are now referred to as student presence and engagement funding for $762,000. This year, the province had announced a one-time funding of strengthening student supports. This is the same funds that they've now rolled into the funding formula, so it is being carried through next year. The inflationary pressures we had also received this current year. When it first came through for this year, it was announced as a one-time, but now we've seen in the funding announcement that it is carried through until next year. So that $2.2 million has also greatly helped mitigate other inflationary factors. And again, we also have the property tax offset grant of $236,000 versus raising our municipal tax. So the provincial funding cycle in general, on February 1st, the province will announce our funding for the following school year. On March 31st, all of our budgets are due into the province. By March 15th, we have to have our city tax request into the City of Thompson for the special levy. Generally in a school year, around December or January, the funding for the current year is adjusted as the province receives our June 30th audited financial statements, and then they adjust accordingly for the current year. At this time, we haven't received our current year funding adjustment. There's been a delay at the provincial level, technical issues, and have caused some delay on that. To give you a bit of an idea though, the funding adjustment that we saw last year was $756,000. So when we do get an adjustment, it's not smoothed out over time. We will receive the notice and then it will be removed immediately from our next due provincial payment. So we'll get a little further in the presentation. The requirement for surplus is generally how we soften that blow of the adjustment. We are anticipating a slight adjustment. We just don't know the full impact of that yet. When we look at the funding comparison, last year's funding announcement, versus this year's funding announcement. The school district will be receiving $36.38 million versus $35.28 million this current year. So we're seeing an overall increase of 3.1%. The majority of the increase is coming in the line item additional operating support, and that's where I referred to the province providing us additional for inflationary measures and the strengthening student support line. Item out to note as well, our special needs, we are getting bumped up to an additional $292,000 from this current year of $219,000. But I'm sure you could ask anyone in student services, and $80,000 is a drop in the bucket for them when we look at the cost of assessments and clinicians and student supports. Generally, this slide is a little bit more graphic, but what this is showing visually is where the current budget is of $35.28 million. We have not received our adjustment, so the gray bar stays the same. Generally, we would be seeing in funding announcements that our district would have received a 10 or a 12 or a 15% funding increase. Those types of numbers are always based on the adjusted value. We don't have the adjusted value, so we are seeing a true 3% increase year over year in the funding. So it is more, it's definitely more comparable, and we're looking at apples to apples. So I'm sure many of you have come tonight to find out about your local taxes and how it's going to have an effect on your pocketbook. So the tax effects come to the individuals through the 2023 Special Levy. The province has directed that all school property taxes remain frozen and has provided a property tax offset grant in place of increases. School property taxes are referred to as a special levy, and it's the municipal tax requirement that the school district requests to the city of Thompson. It's like our invoice or bill that we hand to the city. The difference between the funding we get from the province and our overall district operating budget is raised through the special levy. So when we refer to taxes, we refer to a mill rate. A mill rate is the amount of tax that's raised per dollar of assessed value of your property. School district mill rates are calculated using 45% of your property value, and it is referred to as a portioned school assessment. The 45% is the portion, and the school assessment is the tax request from the school. One mill will raise $1 on every $1,000 of assessment. So I've provided some historical figures. Going back to 2016, our special levy request to the city of Thompson was $8.7 million. This coming year for 2023, we are looking at $8.9 million, just slightly below last year's level. Between 2016 and 2023, the mill rate has gone up 2%. So I think the district needs to be very proud of how we are managing our tax requests to the city. You will note, though, the mill rate is fluctuating. That is dependent on property values, and when the assessors come every 2 or 3 years, your property will be reassessed. If there's been enhancements and your values go up or they go down, that drives the mill rates. New builds coming onto the tax roll will also affect the overall total dollar value, but what we're looking at is the dollar values divided amongst all of the residents of Thompson. And that's what's raised 2%. So when we look at our revenue visually, I commented today, I didn't realize the pie was blue, but that's provincial funding of 82%. So it's a good coordination. The provincial funding of $38 million is 81.9% of our total revenue. Our property taxation is $7.7 million, or 16% 0.6%. We have other revenue of $673,000. The majority of items in that line item is our sponsored students from our First Nations communities surrounding us, as well as the Frontier resident fees that they pay for the students coming in from Paint Lake. So when we look at our provincial and local taxes as our revenue, where do our actual dollars go? Comparing the budget this current year to next year, our total budget is $46.39 million for next year compared to this current year of $45.19 million. We are seeing an increase of 2.64%. Surplus will not be required to balance our budget this year, or next year, I'm sorry. This current year, we are going to be using $362,000 of surplus to balance current year budget. So you will notice that our funding increased 3.1%, but our operating expenses have increased only 2.6%. The difference is because we're not using surplus, which is a good thing. You can see the majority of our increase is related to salaries of $888,000. Employee benefits are slightly down. That's as it relates to maternity leave benefits. We have top-up benefit packages within our agreements, and we haven't been seeing as many maternities as we have in the past, so that has been a little bit of a savings there. Our services have gone up $296,000. This is mainly our transportation. We're seeing a lot of our transportation dollars going up for our students, so that was the major factor there. Supplies, materials, and equipment are totaling $1.7 million, just gone up slightly. Interest and bank charges will remain unchanged, and our transfers, which is our payroll tax, is going up slightly, and that's attributed directly to our increase in salaries. The payroll tax that the school district does pay, the health and education tax on our payroll, it's submitted to the province, and then we receive it back in the form of a grant the following year for it's called the general support grant. So we're paying the education tax, but we get it back the following year. We get back about 95% of what we pay. So overall, our budget is fairly smooth considering the effects of inflation. Our staffing numbers in the bottom corner, if you can see that, are remaining the same as what our current year levels are. We have total staffing of 415 full-time equivalents. This equates to 245 teachers, principals, and clinicians, 95 EAs, 40 custodial and maintenance personnel, and 35 support, which includes all of our school board office senior administration. Again, the pictorial shows we need to manage our salaries and our benefits to stay on track with our budget. Looking at the expenses as they are divided out by categories, our regular instructional instructions for students is the biggest part of our budget at $25.9 million, or 56% of plan. As noted previous, student support services is planned for $9.3 million, 20% of our budget. Instructional and pupil support services is $1.8 million. Included in that is our curriculum service and development, as well as our library services. Our organization wouldn't exist without the support staff as well. Included in our budget is the divisional administration of $1.9 million, or 4%. Our transportation is just shy of $500,000. Operation and maintenance of our facilities is $6.1 million, and again, our payroll tax is $800,000, for a total budget of $46,390,000. We've included in our budget our family outreach program. We have a grant that we're receiving for family outreach program, but we also have committed division dollars to have additional personnel in these positions and helping our families. We have many recovery, learning, and well-being strategies, early year support at Wapanuck, grade 9 transition and credit attainment strategies. The Mino Pimatisawan program was introduced in 2021 and is going to be continuing. The early literacy intervention programs and numeracy and speech language are in great demand as we, especially as we're trying to embrace recovery learning in that as well. Mature student program is included, as well as additional clinical support services. We have strong relationships with numerous community partners and all levels of government that make this budget possible. We have municipal agreements, provincial, federal, community stakeholders such as UCN, MKO, Regional Health Authority, Shared Health. We couldn't do it without all of the relationships and the partnerships. And we're very thankful that we have that. So we spoke of surplus, and surplus is an emergency funding source. It helps us to maintain local tax levels. Well, this year it's ministerial directive, so that was a bigger help than surplus. But the provincial requirement also limits our maximum surplus to be 4% of expenditures, or $1.8 million. So what we're seeing, our June 30th audited statements have a balance of operating surplus, undesignated surplus of $1.5 million. This current year's budget is planned to use $358,000 of budget. Previous year was $239,000. We do not have a plan to use any surplus to balance the 23-24 budget, so that brings our surplus to 2.6%, or $1.2 million is the projection on June 30th, 2024. 4% is again the allowed limit by the province, or $1.85 million. So we do still have opportunity to grow that surplus. 1.2 million, 1.3 million are large numbers. When it comes to surplus, though, we need to be mindful that our school division spends about $4 million a month. $3 million of that is usually payroll. So when it comes to 1.8 million, that might get us through 2 weeks of payroll, truly. So we pray for no water breaks. As it relates to our general maintenance for next year, we are still continuing with ongoing regular maintenance upgrade schedule, and our facilities manager has a schedule in place for all facilities to receive little bits of upgrades here and there. We don't focus on just one school or what have you. It's very refreshing to see updates in all the areas, and all staff very much appreciate, I think, coming to school and seeing that there's investment and improvements into their buildings. We've had a delay for a few years now on our asphalting. We are fully expecting to be heavy into our asphalting to recover the projects that have been delayed. We have parking and entrances at various locations throughout to get done in a very short period of time. We try to get all of our asphalting done through the months of July and August to avoid disruption to staff and students. So let's hope that the weather and all the stars align for that to continue for this year. We have one large capital project that is still continuing that's funded by our province. That's our phase 1 envelope update and addition at Artie Parker Collegiate. That's a $12 million project right now that the province is funding for us. The anticipated completion is in 2024. You'll notice a lot of activity beginning outside of Artie Parker, and material coming in and trailers and what have you. They're starting to ramp up, and that involves a steam heating replacement or a boiler replacement into electrical, as well as new dust extraction system, on the envelope update, which refers to improving removing the existing exterior walls, updating the insulation, and then redoing the exterior. We've had the envelope updates at both Deerwood and Riverside and have had extremely good results with the energy efficiency that we're achieving there. Envelope updates improve the efficiency of our buildings, and so as a result we end up consuming less energy, which offsets the rising cost of the hydro. So it starts to keep our utilities flat instead of continuing to increase. And as well, this project, we will see an additional 3,200 square feet of instructional space, and you'll start seeing that additional instruction space come out from the front of the building. So every budget has challenges, and this is no different. We are still here within our organization. We're seeing post-pandemic effects. The mental health and well-being of our staff, students, our entire organization, we're trying to address it with programs and just different strategies. We have a lot of learning gaps. There's curriculum pressures, and we're seeing issues as well still with attendance coming out of the pandemic, and attendance hesitancy, I guess. There's challenging demographics. We have a lot of disparity within our community, and we have complex student situations that we're dealing with on a daily basis now. Transiency rates overextend our resources. We're fortunate that we can get these children assessed, and it seems that once they get assessed, some often leave the system too soon before we can apply resources, or the additional assessments that are required overextend and create long wait lists. The diversity and complexity of the student programming and needs is ever present. Recovery learning, again, strained wait lists for resources and assessments themselves are part of the challenge. We continue to see recruiting issues and attracting specialized positions. Usually recruitment in the north is a challenge, but the specialized positions for speech, French, Cree, music create even more of a hurdle for Superintendent Bartlett. Our provincial funding is 82% of our revenue stream. So we are very much dependent on the province and their funding announcements. We've been very fortunate that they see our needs, recognize what needs to happen here for our success, and are in support of that. And we do have restricted taxation, so we have no other sources of revenue to rely upon. Moving forward, there is a new provincial funding model coming down. We have not seen that yet. We've seen some structure, a vague framework, but how that is really going to roll out in the coming year still remains to be seen. This year, it was to be rolled out in December of this year. Again, there was some more technical difficulties, and that has delayed it. So we are still under the old funding model that's been in place for 20 plus years. And again, another challenge that I've noted is retaining local autonomy. As we move towards provincial bargaining, and we have to make sure that we still have our northern voice heard, and that's going to continue to be, advocacy efforts is going to be very important for us to continue and to keep our local autonomy. So I fully believe our budget aligns with our district priorities, accounting for student well-being, literacy and numeracy, student graduation, and career development. Extensive partnering within our community. We have commitment to stakeholders, commitment to sustainability, as well as fiscal responsibility. I believe in today's times with the inflation and being able to present a budget with very small increases is a very good achievement that the school district has been able to provide. So I thank everyone for coming this evening. Is there any questions? Not other questions. Mr. Nazio.
Thank you. When you talk about provincial funding being at 82% with restricted taxation, actually we are very fortunate in our position that most places, the FSP or the funding of school programs funds at 52%.
Yep.
The extra money that we get is through what is called equalization. And because of equalization, we recover quite a bit of our expenses that we're not able to generate through the taxation. And so from that right there, we get a pretty high provincial funding rate compared to a lot of places.
It's about $17 million we receive in equalization.
Of a $46 million budget, yeah. So that's what I just wanted to point that out, is that a lot of places right now are talking about doing the same thing in consulting, and when they're not given the money to operate, they have to find other sources. We've been fortunate enough where the province has given us, I wouldn't say adequate, but has always maintained the level, so then we are able to maintain our services as well. And that's the trend I've noticed over the last few years. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Mayor Smook.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for your budget. It looks very promising. We have been very lucky in the city of Thompson over the last few years with the projects that the city's received and what the school district's doing, and hope for continued favor on that, and watch over the next couple months as our budget unfolds, and we'll invite you to the presentation now. Thank you.
Anything else? Do we have any?
On behalf of the trustees, I'd like to thank you, Kelly, for doing this.
Thank you.
You've done a great job.
Thank you. I have one question from Trustee Sharker. What type of interest does the school district pay that costs $49,600 per year? So at presently, the school district has a project, a provincial funded project of $12 million that is proceeding. The province does not advance the full amount of the project. They advance it in various stages based on cash flow of the project. What we have is a credit line that has been identified and approved through the borrowing bylaw that's established a $6 million line of credit. Should we get to the point in the project that we need to start utilizing the line of credit to begin paying our progress certificates on the project, we will be incurring interest costs. That is included in our budget. Up until this point, we have not had to utilize that. The province does not cover the cost of interest expenses. So that is, well, when we're funded by the province, at some point they're going to pay those interest expenses, but the funding of the project does not cover any interest. He said thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming this evening and making a difficult day a little bit easier. Some friendly faces is nice. Thank you very much and have a good evening.